This is the very first webinar from Innovex Supply Chain, and we're welcomed by our very lovely guests from Corex by Devonti. And today we'll be talking about the benefits of building versus buying a WMS platform for your supply chain solutions, specifically in the space of retail and e-commerce, and commerce for that matter. While a lot of the topics we'll discuss today will focus within this specific industry, this can be applied for any true segment within the supply chain, and anyone who wants to implement or build their own WMS solution. We're here today to break down the benefits of all and to help you find what's the right solution for you today. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let our guests introduce ourselves, starting with Eamon McLarnon from Innovex.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Josh. Eamon McLarnon here. I'm the Vice President of our Global Supply Chain Practice here within Innovex. So I'm tasked with scaling and growing the practice. Looking forward to the questions that you've got, Josh, and obviously the interaction with our two esteemed colleagues.
Okay. Thank you, Josh, as well. My name is Robert Fried. I'm Partner Account Manager of Devonti. And Devonti is the supplier and IP owner of the Corex products. And our products are WMS products. So we supply for several markets, for the e-fulfillment market, but also for 3PL market, our WMS systems. We are in business for more than 30 years. So we have some versions which are still running, but are more the client service model. And lately, for a few years now, we are building on the cloud systems, and therefore we have the Corex Enterprise and the Corex Ecom Plus application. Because it is there's both cloud applications. We don't sell that and implement it from the Netherlands. We are based in the Netherlands, but we have all over Europe and a lot of places in the world partners. And one of our partners is Innovex for the England or the Great Britain, Poland, I think the United States were focus areas. And my role is to keep people like Eamon happy, selling and implementing our WMS systems.
Sounds nice. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Jos. I'm Robert Verijn, product architect within the company, responsible for product strategy. Already with the company for 30 years, a lot of WMS and logistic background. And I always try to keep Robert and the customers happy. That is my main goal. Happy customers.
Thank you all and welcome in. And glad to get started. Glad to have you all on board and to get your very valuable insights today. I'm going to go ahead and get kicked off here. So, Eamon, maybe you can get us started by answering this question first, and then we'll go Robert, Reith, and Robert. So,
okay.
Eamon, in your opinion, what are the key challenges in implementing WMS solutions in the context of retail and e-commerce?
So I think, in all honesty, there's a number. I think more specific, and that's quite generic within WMS per se. But I think from retail and e-commerce, I think the important thing certainly for retailers is inventory accuracy. That's one point. Obviously, the retailers don't want to have stock outs. They don't want to have overstock, especially in grocery or food retail, because that creates wastage. So that's inventory accuracy is, and it's certainly one thing that the WMS can bring. I think also having the ability for multi-channel fulfillment. I mean, we all know now with the multiple ways you can buy. You can either go into a brick and mortar store, you can buy online, you can click and collect, and it's having a system that really does connect all of those together to ultimately give the buyer the experience that they're looking for. There are many others, but that's kind of like, I think the two main ones for retail and e-commerce that would probably differentiate that micro vertical from any other.
That is, of course, the ultimate goal, what they want to achieve, but looking to the implementation, check the implementation,
the willingness to get there during an implementation, the willingness of and be busy with change management, because to achieve those goals, we all have nice software solutions, but there should also be willingness for change management, standardization of processes. So that is also, I think, key within the implementation process of a software solution.
Yeah.
Robert, since we have you speaking now, do you have some additional challenges that you've seen from the core side?
Like Rob Dreeman said already, there are many key challenges, of course, and one related to the things they already said is that it's very important that you can integrate very easily to the different systems, because many retailers in e-commerce business already have various systems, place for the inventory, for selling, etc., transport, logistics, etc. So I think one of the key challenges is that if you are able to integrate them quite smoothly, it's a key success factor.
Yeah, clear responsibilities within the IT landscape.
Yeah, the total ecosystem, or how do they call it nowadays? Yeah, to get that smoothly integrated.
Great. And Robert Reed, since we've had you opening up or closing out that latest question, can you tell me, have you had any experience? What has been your experience in the customer side of the buying strategies behind the optimization of supply chain? And if things went well, things didn't go so well, what were some of the key outcomes that you saw through these different patterns and implementations?
Of course, in my 30 years, I'm now in logistics software. I had some experience with the supply chain integration, and also for make or build. And one of them I want to mention is that as an example, where it can go wrong, and it did go wrong, is a few years ago when we were at the flower auction, which is a very specific way of doing business. It's not comparable with all other kinds of business, auction and tulips and growing flowers, etc. And I worked with a company who did real building over there, making specific functionality to get it all done. And there came a new management, and the manager said, "We don't do that anymore. We're going to implement SAP." And then, like Henry Ford teacher already, you can have every color you want as long as it's black. And that was counterproductive to the whole situation we had over there. So it was a complete mismatch, and it was in the end a complete failure. So you have to realize when things are capable of fixing this with standard software and when they aren't. And yes, be aware of that.
And Eamon, from your side, when it comes to the selection of building versus buying, what were some of the key decision-making factors, and what were the outcomes that came through? If you could provide a similar example of perhaps a positive outcome and a similar negative outcome from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've said this before many times, that there is no right or wrong for either. It really is down to a number of things that any business would have to consider. And I know Robert's already touched on some of them. I mean, for me, if you're going to be building software, some of the advantages that you're going to get is that you're going to have a solution that is totally bespoke to your business processes. You're the owner. You've got greater control over that, and it could bring you some competitive advantage. You know, it really could. However, there are downsides. You know, from a custom, if you're going to go into custom development, and that is that there's going to be a period of time at the beginning where there's going to be high costs and very little outcome because you're building, right? So, you know, yes, I know there are modern ways of deploying software today with, you know, the agile methodology as an example. But still, there's going to be a period of time where you're not going to get, let's say, business value from the software that you're building. You've got to allow that time into your plan. There could be some higher costs initially up front. due to the fact that you might have to set up an environment, whether you put it into your own cloud or a managed cloud, or whether you go on premise. There's costs to set all that up. And then in the long run, you've got to maintain and support the software you've created. Okay, so you're going to have a team of people ready to support your operating hours within the warehouse, for example, that should there be a technical issue, they're readily available. Now, if you look at and that's on, let's call it the build pillar. If you look at the buy pillar, typically you're going to get a quicker implementation because the software already exists. Okay, so you're not constructing it, you're not building it from zero. You're literally going to take the finished article product, such as Corax, and you're going to configure it. So you're going to change settings to allow you to have a business outcome from a specific way of configuring the software. It's much quicker. You will get business value sooner. Okay. Now, obviously, that in itself sounds like a great benefit, but again, there are also challenges in the fact that you could be limited to how much customization you're going to be able to do to the software. Okay. When you go into the world of multi-tenant software now, in the software as a service model, a lot of software vendors don't want to have lots of different customizations within the software because it's hard for them to manage. Okay, so there could be some constraints around that. You've also obviously then got a dependency on the software vendor because you're relying on their expertise to be able to support you. There are also some possible integration challenges that you may face. They may have a certain way that they deal with data coming in and out of their solution that you as the client then has to map everything to what they require. But again, so there's pros and cons for both. And like I say, for me, before anybody wants to make a decision, I think they've just got to openly consider all of that, ask themselves the honest questions in all directions, and then they will come out with the outcome which is right for them.
Thank you. So Robert Reith gave us, a negative outcome of a poor implementation, a poor shifting strategy, and Eamon took us on a more neutral approach. Robert, do you think you can give us a positive example of when the build came into play and you saw a really successful customer implementation and integration?
Yeah, because if we look back and to our solutions, we started 30 years back and we developed everything ourselves. That was also part of the business model. And switching from on-premise to cloud and to a SaaS solution, we really adopt the best of breed approach. So do what you can do good. And with a SaaS solution in the cloud, with an open application, it is easier to integrate, and then finding the right partner and building the right partnerships. It also has advantages in the time to market. So WMS should take care of the logistics, internal logistics of the warehouse management. And if you need to communicate with a lot of e-com platforms, there are a lot of solutions for that, as an example, and we did. And just start a partnership with an integration partner who is specialized in keeping up with all the changes on that e-com platforms and changes in integration. They are taking care of that part of the business, and we just focus on the logisticals within the warehouse. Of course, also a bit of surrounding. So the best of breed approach, but also shorten time to market. But also needs strong partnerships. So that is then the pros and cons. But that is people's work, like I always say.
Right. And Robert Reith, as we're looking at the general topic of optimization and improving these processes, how did you find that customers in the space are determining when it's more strategic to invest in a pre-built solution versus orienting themselves and building out something custom themselves, especially in the fast-paced environment of retail and commerce?
Yeah, well, I think, and it can be a coincidence, but I think about the industry best practices also, because if you're in a market in which there are best practices, then I think it's good for you to have a good look at those best practices, try to integrate it into one ecosystem. But if there's not, if you're in your market is that specialized and there are hardly any best practices foreseen until now, then you could consider to start building and make your own best practice.
Do you think you can provide us an example or two of some of the best practices that come to mind?
Yeah, in our supply chain, you have, for example, route planning. It's specialism. That's a best practice, and there are many people who do that and do that very good. So I would never make it in, for example, as it is a part of a TMS or WMS. I would never do that myself. They have very complex algorithms. It's going to AI even. So that is perhaps in supply chain a good example.
And Eamon, from your side, when do you find and how does one actually determine when it's more strategic to invest in pre-built solutions?
It's a difficult question. I think that there's a number of key factors that have to be considered when making a decision. I mean, Robert's touched on, you know, the best practices that exist within the business. So I think that if a company is going to be in the market for either a off-the-shelf software or they're considering building their own, they've clearly got a business challenge. And the question that I would pond to them is that, okay, let's define what that challenge is, and then let's look at what the options are, and let's take careful consideration as to how we can actually achieve the outcome. And some of them, I mean, Robert earlier mentioned time to market, right? I mean, in an e-com retail world, it's quick, right? It's a fast-paced industry, as you've already said. They probably don't have a lot of time to answer the business challenge that they're currently facing. Okay, so there's time to market. Cost is also a consideration that needs to come into play. The complexity of their requirements, you know, when they start to actually pull apart their business model, they will realize how complex it really is as an operating unit. And then ultimately, it's if you're going to build the solution yourself, you've got to make sure you've got the skilled resources in-house to do so, right? And not a lot of companies will realize at that point exactly what skills they will require. So there's going to be time required to build that team, bring them onto the program, upskill them in what the objectives are, and then they can go to work and do their job. It's a difficult one, and I don't want to be sitting here saying, oh, in this occasion you would build and in that occasion you would buy, because I don't think there is a prescriptive menu or recipe. I think each challenge has to be taken, and all of these considerations have to be asked for each one, and then the outcome will come, because it really depends on what are the main drivers. Is it speed? Is it functionality? You know, the challenges and constraints around having the resources, you can overcome them. But it really, you know, it's understanding exactly, you know, what is the business looking for? How do we best achieve that? Is it through a build model where you build your own, or is it through a buy where you bring in a third-party vendor to give you a ready-made solution that you then configure?
Robert, did you have anything to add to that topic?
I can summarize it if I'm allowed to. It is every time a business case and looking to that business case.
And Eamon, from your side, for those who are running in parallel the initiatives of both building and buying in some circumstances, what challenges do you often foresee in maintaining that balance and ensuring that the strategy of each complements how the systems collaborate with each other effectively?
So I think for me, the big one is going to be around data integration or systems integration. I mean, that's kind of, you know, the WMS, that's the supply chain execution tool that's going to sit within a much bigger IT landscape. Okay, so there will be systems upstream and there will be systems downstream of the WMS. So the integration complexity is always going to be something that really needs to be considered, and it really needs to be clearly understood as to who is doing what. I think if you're going to be running, and typically when you're implementing a WMS, there will be other smaller projects in parallel, right? So data would be one of them, okay? Business change management would be another, right? Now, they're all going to sit within maybe an overall program, but they will all have their own workflows and work streams that they will work to. I think another, from a cost perspective, try and ensure that you're not duplicating costs anywhere, okay? So, I mean, you know, if you've got multiple projects running in parallel, you could be doing the same activity on every one. Is it something that you could look at harmonizing and manage it in a more common way? I think another challenge would be around resource allocation. Again, we don't have a finite number of people. We need to make sure that we've got the right people on the right project at the right time. So that in itself, the project management and the resource allocation is absolutely key. And I think more fundamentally, it's kind of like the alignment of the goals, right? Everybody understanding what it could be, that the goal for their work stream is an input for the follow-on work stream, or it could be that they are running purely in parallel, we just need to make sure that when they come together at the end, everybody's clear on what that the goal and the objective was.
And Robert, as you're customer facing, have you experienced this? Have you seen this firsthand? Customers that are both facing the challenges and, managing that balance well?
We did implementations in the past, and that were implementations of third-party logistics providers with 4 to 6, 7 warehouses in one project with the same solution, and then it starts. Then one logistics service provider, you think they work all the same, all the warehouses work the same, and there during implementation it starts already with own goals they want to achieve in each site. Own view to the how things can be optimized. So doing one project at one customer with several warehouses with our solution is already difficult. And then we only talk about WMS implementation. So that is already a discussion about you should use all the same shipping label. Oh, no. So yes, we have several experiences in that area. Solely on WMS implementation, not WMS, ERP, and so on within project. Also, of course, but solely WMS implementation is already difficult. Multiple warehouses in one project of one of our customers.
And Robert Reith, what were your thoughts? I saw you nodding along there.
Yeah, well, if you do this in parallel, you have a pre-built system and a customized system at the same time. You will have to manage competing priorities. Like Eamon said, you don't have infinite resources. So at some moment in time, you will have to prioritize what you're going to do. And then the balance should be okay between the pre-built and the customized solutions. And then, of course, customized solutions, it's always hard to get a straight schedule to make the right estimations, how long it's going to take. That's far better to estimate with a pre-built solution, of course, than customizations.
Yeah. Eamon?
Yeah, just one other thing that popped in my mind when I was listening to Robert. I mean, I've experienced it also where, I've been on projects where it's multi-warehouses, possibly in multiple countries, all at the same time. Okay. I think for me, one of the key success factors is having the right governance model in place with ownership. Okay. And that then, in theory, and I'll say in theory because we've probably all got examples of where theory differs to practice. But I think in theory, then when you get to the right level of the governance and there is a challenge, the person has ownership and understands not just, warehouse 1, versus warehouse 2 versus warehouse 3. He or she is looking at the whole thing saying, well, hang on, no, inbound will work like this. It has to. Right, because of these reasons. It doesn't matter what you think in warehouse 4 because you've had it done differently in the past. Now we're going to this kind of, let's call it standard model. And I think that getting that right is absolutely the recipe for success. Get it wrong, I won't say it's a recipe for disaster, but it's going to cause a lot of problems, right? And where it will show up is in the time to deploy within the different warehouses. Because if every time the implementation partner is having to redesign the processes for every single warehouse, then it's not a multi-site rollout. It's literally a number of parallel projects that just happen to be using the same solution.